Hello, everyone. It is now day 21, reading through 1st and 2nd Kings, a study that began with 1st and 2nd Samuel, but now into 2nd Kings, today chapters 19 and 20. This is our final week reading through this study. This has had some challenging turns. The books of Samuel were much more appealing, much easier reading, perhaps much more inspiring. First and Second Kings has been more a stranger and tougher literature to get through. But here we are now, navigating in the final week, and there's some who have joined us in the last couple of readings, and here coming in the tail end is always difficult, but once we're finished with this study, we'll take a break for a couple of weeks and then find something else to go into and explore. One thing as far as an announcement, looks like Thursday is going to be the final video. If there's any questions, comments, something you want addressed or whatever, send that to me in an email or text or any kind of effective form, and I'll address that. If the content is substantial enough for me to address, then I might do that in a extra video on Friday. When we concluded 2nd Samuel, I had about 30 minutes worth of a video to address those things, and I'm not certain if we'll have that for 1st and 2nd Kings. But anyway, where we left off, remember Israel was divided into the northern and southern kingdoms. The northern kingdom was the more wicked of the two kingdoms, and it succumbed to the rising empire of Babylon. However, in the southern kingdom, there was a king that was a good king. There hadn't been many kings between either one of the divided Israel. But Hezekiah was a good king, and he is holding on, but yet was being threatened by the Assyrians. And here in chapter 19, he becomes so overwhelmed that he goes to Isaiah the prophet. Remember, we read through Isaiah back during Advent in December, and that was some challenging reading. He's going to go to Isaiah for guidance. And when he does, he's going to say, this is he's like, I'm a woman, and all of us really, we're like a woman at this point who is in childbirth, labor, and delivery process, and yet is pushing. And, the child we're not able to push the child out. Certainly, we can imagine such a difficulty, and some of you have been there yourselves. And mind you, in this part of the world, of the ancient Middle East, in that time and that place, childbearing was much more complex than it is today. I've mentioned this several times over many different studies and sermons. Women had to bear as many children as they possibly could during their fertile years, and it was very common to lose children in the labor delivery process. It was exceptionally common for a mother in delivery to lose her own life. I've mentioned there's an abundance of remains that are found, bones from antiquity, that show a mother that has died in the process of birthing a child, because the child is only halfway out of the womb in the remains. It's very telling. So in the biblical imagery, when they use a childbearing, this isn't something that in their world is enough to grab hold of your attention and say this is very serious. However, Isaiah is going to reassure Hezekiah that the Assyrians are not they've upset God. God is not going to let the Assyrians take over the southern kingdom of Judah. God's been insulted by the Assyrians, and God ends up taking care of them. And so we see something that we haven't seen much of in 1st and 2nd Kings. Here's God is intervening, and he says, because in verse 34 of 19 of the promise to David. Then we go into chapter 20, and Hezekiah, the king, he is sick. He's going to beg of God, and God is going to heal him. And we've got different reminders of David through this text, and as well as the temple. 1st and 2nd Samuel set up David's reign, and now we've been reading of his posterity here in 1st and 2nd Kings. Remember, 1st Kings, it set up everything about the temple, and then we seem to have forgotten about the temple, and the last couple of readings, we've been reminded more and more of the temple. There's a lot of rich symbolism there. However, there is still a Babylon that is attempting to navigate through the geography of the Middle East and subdue all peoples in her path. And while there's Hezekiah has been healed, and God's hands with him and reminding him that he's a true son of David. Remember, not all these kings were considered to be true heirs of David, because not all of them lived up to how God wanted them to live and rule the kingdom. However, Hezekiah was an exception, and God gave favor, but that favor wasn't going to last. Isaiah is going to tell Hezekiah that those people of Babylon, those people that have taken your brothers in the northern kingdom, they're going to come and get you as well. And of course, it's interesting as the temple, as well as the Davidic lineage, has been mentioned here in chapters 19 and 20. In the world of the Hebrews, purity and sacredness was associated with space and time. Time, remember, the Sabbath, to keep it holy. Time was sacred, the Sabbath day, as well as different events throughout the year. The Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks. Passover, they had sacred time, and they had sacred space, sacred real estate. Jerusalem was the most sacred city, that also called the city of David. Also the temple, which was part of that Davidic lineage, that was the most sacred space within the most sacred city. And now that is going to be at risk from Babylon. And when that falls, it serves to demonstrate the true failure of this divided kingdom. The Babylonians send some representative when Hezekiah is ill, but Isaiah reminds Hezekiah that it's all going to be over one day, and Hezekiah passes away. This has been a shorter video, perhaps a little more scattered. However, I suppose for a reflective question as we go into, what is it now, the final 5 chapters might be, what is it all going to look like in the end? All right, with that, I'll take a break and catch you again on tomorrow's reading.